But throughout 2023, what we've been doing is giving you first-hand conversation with hip-hop icons. We have been blessed. So Hip Hop Closet is blessed, Kaisha's blessed, I've been blessed to be able to have the ability to call on hip-hop legends just to sit with us and have a conversation. This is week 4, correct? We're on episode 4.
This is episode 4, yes.
This is episode 4. This is a special one to me. The man on my left has been a mentor to me in terms of this game. I sat in his home, I sat in his studio, and I watched hip-hop. I learned hip-hop sitting on 108th between 1st and 2nd.
Yep.
Rocking with this man. Shout out to Parlay Clan, all my brothers in Spanish Harlem. Shout out to Agent 106. Dre, I hope, we sent you the thing. I hope that you're here. I hope that you're listening.
I hope so.
Shout out to Said the Dawn, Lyrical Genius.
Yep.
This guy needs no introduction. He's a hip hop icon. We're gonna hear, so this is what I wanna tell y'all. We're gonna get into the weeds a little bit, and that phrase has been on my heart all day because I'm really gonna kind of get into this brother's life, but showing you a side of hip hop that the previous 3 episodes might not have showed you. This is my opportunity to kind of really get you to be a part of some of the things I saw in hip hop. Without further ado, I want to introduce to you guys Gilbert Vasquez, better known as DJ Jibo the Pro.
My brother, thank you.
And I want to put your name out there because obviously you do so much now under your government.
Thank you for the warm welcome.
Yes.
And you know, it's funny, one of the first questions that I asked Marlon, who I know as Deuce my whole life, I'm like, who do you want to talk to, man? You want to talk to Gil Vasquez or do you want to talk to Jibo the Pro?
Right.
Because I feel like over the course of my life, over the course of my career, I kind of have kept the two roles far apart from one another, purposely, I think. You know, just because I don't feel that they've always blended. My hip hop life, you know, was like super precious to me. My Haring life, my philanthropic life, my art world life is also very near and dear, but very distinct from my hip hop life. And I kind of kept them separate, but every now and again they bump heads, and every now and again they hug.
Right.
So here we are. They're hugging. They're hugging today.
They're hugging like a motherfucker tonight.
Yep.
Look, I want to start at the very beginning because with the other 3 episodes, each of those icons, their origin story was interrelated because the backdrop was Brooklyn. Coming from Brooklyn, we understand what hip hop was in Brooklyn, but you do not have that story. And so I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your earliest interaction with hip hop. I want to know Gil the child and how that child got connected to hip hop.
So back in the very early 80s, maybe the late 70s, we used to go to jams that were taking place in Spanish Harlem. I lived on 123rd Street, 2nd Avenue, the Wagner houses, and there were jams like nearby at this place called, we used to call it Woodland Park, right? And it was basically under the
Triborough.
Under the Triborough,
right?
what they used to call the Triborough is now the Kennedy Bridge. And they used to have jams there. It was like a park. It's like a kind of abandoned, like really kind of hard to get to. But they used to throw jams there. And it would be this crew called Spectra Sunshine.
Spectra Sunshine.
Now, again, like you got to consider how, you know, Woodland Park, the proximity to the Bronx, you could literally walk over the bridge,
that bridge, right?
And into like the essence of the Bronx, like
Right.
where all that hip hop shit started. My version of it, or my exposure to it, was not the Bronx. It was Spanish Harlem. It was Spectra Sunshine. It was the Latin Rascals DJing at the Queen of Angels. It was you know, like this guy Smitty, who used to do jams outside. It was a guy from Brooklyn, Cutmaster DC, who used to do jams on 119th Street, between Second and Third. He used to do jams with a dude called Dollar Bill. Cutmaster DC famously is Brooklyn's in the house.
Oh.
Cutmaster DC used to cut it up with a loaf of bread. He used to grab a loaf of bread and get on the turntables and cut, and he was astonishing. He had like the curly fro,
right.
And we just, I mean, I looked at that dude like, you know, he could rap, he could DJ.
Right.
So he was like one of my first like just examples of like I was just in awe, because he was like the triple threat. He could rap, he could, you know, he could DJ, and he could rock a party like light, like easily. And he had this record, Brooklyn's in the House, and he used to come to my hood to rock. So that was like the.
How old were you during that time?
I want to say when Cutmaster DC, I was kind of I was already like in my maybe pre-teens.
So you was like
teens.
outside, like.
I was outside.
Right.
Unsupervised.
Right. You was outside, you could come in. And that's big, because people don't really understand that anymore. I don't think kids understand, like, we were like outside at like 10, 11, 12 years old.
Yeah, you know,
you
I
would
think
play
about,
outside all day and come inside smelling like outside.
Right. I think about who my mother is, and I still have my mom, thank God. I think about who my mother is now versus who she was when I was a little kid, and she's such a worried person. Like, she worries about everything. Back then, yo, I'm going to like 42nd Street. I'm like I'm watching triple feature karate movies, coming back home at like 1 or 2 in the morning at age 11, 12, without any beef from moms.
Right.
Fast forward to now, and she's like, you know it's raining, right? Like, you know, you shouldn't be outside, that kind of thing.
I go through the same thing with Hobie, with my mother.
Right.
Like, Hobie, you had no idea where I was when I was 13 years old. Now you're calling me because there's a car accident outside.
Right, exactly.
So this was your first kind of piece in the hip hop, like most of us, in the parks, in the jams.
Right. So a lot of you know, a lot of competition is happening. A lot of people are dancing. People are boogieing. You know, there's a lot. You know, there's not really like, I wouldn't say there was really like dance crews like that. But you know, we obviously knew who Rocksteady was. We knew who, you know, from the movies and all that stuff. But you know, it was just something that was in the air. And there were people battling at the jams and stuff like that. And it was just, it was just in the air. It wasn't just music. It was style. It was what sneakers you were wearing. It was if you had like the uniform was like La Tigra, Lee's, Shell Adidas or Suede Pumas, Fat Laces. You know, those were like some of the things, like the Lee jacket or with the piece on the back, with the graffiti on the back. Like that was like part of the uniform.
You and I was on the phone. We was talking about BVDs.
BVDs.
Right.
We were talking about street fashion and how most of what we call streetwear now.
He's back. The guy's back. Obviously,
we're doing errands on so what we refer to as streetwear now, back then was brands that we adopted. You know, brands like BVD, like Lee, like Nike, like Puma, like Pro-Keds, La Tigra. Again, you know, these are brands that we adopted, co-opted, as you said, and we just turned something that, you know, was like probably like a $20 pair of jeans, and we just try to make them look super fly. We just had like the utmost pride with the permanent crease, and there was just like a certain flyness about it. Even though it wasn't expensive, we weren't really, you know, we were too young to like, you know, have like Louis and stuff like that at that point, you know. So we had like, we rock what we rock, like with like just pride.
I want you to give us the backdrop of Spanish Harlem, because again, and the reason why I'm asking that is because, you know, coming from Brooklyn, we understand the backdrop of Brooklyn in the 80s, right? The block parties, the drug dealers, the blocks that were hot, the cool out spots. But I want you to give us a sense of Spanish Harlem in the early 80s when you're coming up, you're outside now. You know, the culture, you know, what was popping, you know, the struggles. Tell me about Spanish Harlem back then.
So Spanish Harlem, known as El Barrio, is a small village where, you know, we know each other. A lot of us know each other. If we don't know each other, we know your face. There's certain businesses that, you know, have been there for, you know, generations. Places like Patsy's. You know, Patsy's is a pizza shop that, you know, Frank Sinatra used to go to. There's a barbershop on 116th that used to be a guy named Don Claudio, Italian, old school. You know, El Barrio was a Irish Italian neighborhood initially, and there's still like some evidence of that. You know, there's a restaurant, very famous restaurant that you can't get into no matter what, and it's called Rayo's.
Rails, yeah.
You know, you could probably go and you could have a drink there, but to get a table there, you when they tell you it takes a year, it just means don't bother.
Right. Right.
And back then, you know, Spanish Harlem in a sense is a misnomer, right? Because it turned into a Puerto Rican neighborhood. Spanish was spoken, but there were no Spaniards. You know, Puerto Ricans a lot of times refer to ourselves as Spanish, and it's a misnomer. We are not Spanish. We are Puerto Rican. We speak Spanish, and really it was really a neighborhood that it was black, Puerto Rican, Dominican. We had a sprinkle of Italian. It was a lot of different cultures that lived side by side and next to each other. And we learned from each other, and we hung out, and we lived within the same proximity. There was not really that much division. The crews that existed back then, Zulu, the Crazy Bunch, East Side Crew, Cherry Bus Crew. Like I could think of all these like crews that, you know, wore colors with like the old English letters and old English letters on their hats, and that's just what it was. It just, right. You know, it really wasn't. You weren't a crew because you were selling drugs or anything like that. It just because, you know, you were just part of a certain neighborhood, and that's, you know, you had a certain set of friends and y'all wore the same colors, and that's what it was. It really didn't get too nefarious until later, into the crack era. Yeah,
and you know, from studying gangs, one thing that is mentioned in all the texts is that gangs were first tribal and territorial. Like in New York, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there were thousands of gangs. Every neighborhood had a crew, right, and that crew would pass down to the next generation as they came up. Right. And that's kind of what it was. It was never about nefarious, like you say, nefarious acts, criminal acts. It was really this block of space.
Right, it was territory.
Is ours.
Right.
And we wear these colors, and if you come in here, we're going to know that you're not from here.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, you leave out of Spanish Harlem, you come to Brooklyn Tech. Out of the 4 episodes, 3 of my episodes have been Tech Nights, which if you're a Tech Night, you already know how I give it up. But you come to Brooklyn. Tell me about that.
So coming to Brooklyn from Spanish Harlem was like going to another country for us. The train ride was long.
Yeah.
We had to get off on Nevins. When we got off on Nevins to go to Brooklyn Tech, I remember the first week, I swear to I kid you not, a group of kids tried to jump us. And I swear to you, when I say they were kids, they were not in high school.
They were kids.
They were junior high, probably 7th or 8th grade. I'm like, what? I'm like, I could not wrap my brain around what was happening at that moment.
Right.
But I acclimated.
Right.
You know, I just had a very dear friend who passed, who was also a Tech Knight, John Garcia. Dear friend. And he was like one of my first friends that I met at Tech, from Sunset Park. And we remained friends up until, you know, literally like a month ago, when he passed. But Tech, I don't know, like my idea of Tech was like, oh, I'm going to a school that's going to be a bunch of nerds and a bunch of soft kids. Like, you know, all these smart kids, there's no way that there's going to be as tough as El Barrio or Spanish Harlem. Like, there's no way. There's no way. So I'm thinking, you know, okay, well, I'm going to be cool. Like, you know, because, man, I was in for a rude awakening. Because within Tech, it actually ends up being more dangerous because these kids are not only tough, but they're smart. They're tough and smart. So it's just interesting, like interacting. Like I wasn't exposed to like 5%ers in Spanish Harlem like that. Brooklyn is where I got my first taste of that, and also like a different fashion. You know, like the beaver, like the rabbit Kangos. Like there was like just a certain style. The Clarks, you know, the gods used to like just rock it a certain way.
Right.
And so I got exposed to all these other cultures too, because most of the kids in my junior high school were either black or Latino. In Tech, you had white folks, you had Asian folks, you had folks of every culture intermingling, and it was different. It was really my first exposure to those different cultures.
You were at Tech during the origin story of the Decepticons.
Correct.
84, 85, 86, Meg,
Correct.
Soundwave, these cats putting it together. Did you ever have any interaction with those guys?
You know, I kind of saw the rumblings of when that started, right? And these kids were the outcasts, right? Like I feel like, and you know, I could be wrong, my memory could be distorted, but the Deceps were not the tough kids. Right. From what I remember, like they were not like the outwardly tough guys. They were like the kind of nerdy kids that were a bit outcast, but then when they got together and decided that enough was enough, they organized and they became a terror. They became a terror. Like they would have like fights, let's say at Nevins at the train station, run and then come back and act like a spectator, and then the cops are like trying to sort it out, and they're looking like, oh wow, you know, like they're like social engineering,
tough and smart
dogs,
right?
Social engineering in 1985,
right?
You know,
right.
So, like I said, tough and smart.
So you were at Tech for how many years?
I was in Tech till 86. So 83 I went in, and my wife is gonna love to hear this. Because any chance I get, I mention that, you know, I was skipped the grade, and she always laughs. She's like, "Why you always say that?"
Yeah, I say it too.
I was skipped the grade, so I went in to Tech when I was 13 in 83, and then I left Tech in 86 to finish high school in Manhattan Center, which was closer to home. It was just more convenient.
But Manhattan Center is also a story space, like.
Yeah, Manhattan Center is, you know, basketball famous, it's hip hop famous. Dame Dash went there. You know, it has like its own history, and there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of pride in Manhattan Center. That to this day, like they still do like, you know, reunions, like that old high school, like the old 86 class, the 87 class still get together. Shouts to Manny. Shouts to Sorrell, rest in peace. Yeah, they are still really tight.
Yeah, they're a force. Manhattan Center is definitely a force in the history of high schools in New York City. So during this time, are you in hip hop? Like, and when I say that, what I mean is like You know, when I was 16 years old, I was kind of like in hip hop. Like I was dancing at parties and I was rapping. Like
I was in it always. Like I feel like I started as a dancer, dancer slash rapper.
Right.
You know, I used to my big move was the backspin. I could backspin better than anybody, but I couldn't really do windmills.
Right.
And that was kind of like, you know, that was like the next level,
right?
And you know, I couldn't really pass the backspin level, so that was that. And I enjoyed rapping, and I got into that. But DJing was kind of always really there. Like I've been DJing since I was 10. My brother who is 11 years older than me was in the military. He brought home on leave once. He brought home 2 turntables, a mixer, and it's like, yo, don't mess with this while I'm gone. As soon as he left,
I'm
on it.
Right.
I'm like buying records. I'm like, you know, learning how to DJ. I'm mixing. And my brother was not really like a hip hop DJ like that. He was really more interested in disco. He was really interested in blending one record into another. He was not into the jigga chigga. He did not really like that much. That wasn't really his gem, you know. But that was my thing, you know. So I was involved in DJing really throughout, and then that just emerged as my thing. Like I wanted to pursue DJing. I didn't know really how. You know, we would do like little house parties and stuff like that. When I was in high school, I had my dad buy me a TR 707 Roland drum machine. So I was thinking about producing even then. So you know, I was always interested in it. I just didn't really know how to get my foot in the door, you know.
So you leave Manhattan Center. Do you go to college?
I go to college for 6 months.
What college?
I go to LaGuardia Community.
Right.
And the students go on strike. So I'm like, wait a minute, like what's going on here? And I think they were going on strike because there was like a tuition hike, and the students took over the building. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm good. So you know, I decided not to pursue my studies, even though in hindsight, in a way, I wish I did, because I was really
What were
young.
you majoring in?
I didn't even get to that.
You didn't get to that point.
But you have to test into LaGuardia. So what did you go in
Did
for,
I?
right?
No, you got to test into LaGuardia College or LaGuardia High School.
Oh, my bad. I'm still at.
Yeah, LaGuardia High School is a whole
that's
different thing.
That's different.
That's a talent school. That's
Right.
like, so
LaGuardia class
LaGuardia
of
Community
89
College,
this
you
year.
know,
Yeah.
was like, you know, where you went if you didn't get accepted to any place, probably.
Right, quote
really.
unquote, real college.
Yeah, and I didn't, you know, to be honest, I really didn't have that guidance, you know, like I didn't really have, my parents really were not pushing me to go to school. I didn't really have that at home. My father did go to college. He went to the University of Puerto Rico after the service, but even he didn't really push college on me like, yo, you gotta do this. So I went to work. I was eager to like, you know, like get a job and start making my own money. One of the first jobs I got was at the Gap. And I kind of started to learn the retail world and retail aspect of working. From there, I went and got a job at downtown at Aka Joe, at this little T-shirt store, and that's where I met Keith Haring.
So I want to get into that. And I knew you worked in retail. I remember hearing you worked at Armani.
Correct.
But I didn't know about the Gap and the Aka Joe. So it's 88 maybe?
So 87.
87?
87, I'm in my last year of high school, 87, 88. I'm at the Gap, and I quit the Gap, and I want to go downtown, because downtown is like cool.
Yeah, the energy
like,
is there.
You know, the Astor hair, and it was just vibes in the East Village, on Broadway. All of that was just super vibes.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be in close proximity to that. I don't know why, but it just was a cool factor. All the dope stores were there. So that's where I wanted to be. So I got a job at Alcajo, and it was like on the corner of Astor and Broadway.
Right there. That's right there.
Really like the heart.
Yeah, that's the heart.
That's like the entrance to the
that's
neighborhood.
the gateway, right. And so you meet Keith. Tell me about the first time you met Keith.
So the first time I met him, he walks in, and he's looking for a guy named Kevin, who worked there but wasn't there that day.
Right.
I said, no, I'm sorry, Kevin's not here. When Kevin comes in the next day, I say to Kevin, like, Kevin, I think Keith Haring was here. Are you serious? You know this guy? Like, are you joking? He's like, yeah. And I knew about Keith because I knew the pop shop. I was obviously a DJ, rapper, hip hopper. So I knew that he had done a campaign with Adidas with Run DMC. So
right, because at this time, Keith is Keith.
Keith is Keith.
Yeah, he's Keithin at this point.
He is out of here. He's
Right.
out of here. He's MTV. He's out of here.
Yeah. Madonna,
All of
hanging
that.
out, all of that.
All of that.
Right.
So Kevin arranges a visit to the studio, and I like to say this. When I walked into the studio for the first time, it felt like I had landed on Mars. And I say that because I really didn't have a point of reference. I didn't really have anything to compare it to. I didn't have anything to contextualize that experience, right? I had never met like a successful artist. To my mind, successful artists were dead. So to meet this guy in the flesh, has this amazing studio, living his best life and super successful, and is super humble. And I'm seeing paintings on the wall, I see t-shirts, I see posters, I see staff coming back and forth, I see all this stuff, and I'm just like amazed. And he's super kind, and I'm asking questions, and he's super kind and answering and all this stuff. I think he gives me like a t-shirt or something like that. And from then on, we just became friends. Like, we just became fast friends. I was like nearby. He would invite me to like parties. Now, here's the thing. Keith got invited. Keith had essentially the key to the city. So any hot party that was popping off, any club, any new club opening, any hot thing that was happening, Keith had access to. So for me, college was that. College was going to see Clark Kent, was going to see Larry Levan, Junior Vasquez, Stretch Armstrong, Kid Capri. That was college for me. That was like to see the greats that were really, DJing and really doing it at a high level. I was just in complete awe of that. To be in those spaces was incredible.
I was watching the Haring documentary, and it's funny because when I turned it on, I was saying to myself, I hope I see G. I hope I see G in this shit, right? And as I move on, like, you guys are in like some like basement party, like it looks dark, and he's DJing?
I doubt that.
Or was it was somebody DJing and y'all were behind, but I saw you.
Right.
And there you were on my screen, G-Bo, looking young.
Right.
And just like, for you to say this was your college education,
right.
I could see it. Like, that makes sense.
That was college for me.
Because you were like there, but you seemed to be like a sponge.
Right, right. I was really just trying to learn everything that I could learn, and just, occasionally I would get to talk to these DJs. I talked to Larry Levan. Larry Levan, I mean, he was not really of my generation, but Larry Levan is the god DJ. And the DJs know who Larry Levan is, and they bow, because he is the the peak.
He's the quintessential.
He is, I mean, he made so much happen. You know, he lorded over that room, that Paradise Garage room. He made music, songs like Heartbeat he's responsible for. So to have a conversation and to be able to pick that man's brain was just, it was gold.
So now your reason for being in the Village is set. Like, once you meet Keith,
Right.
you're on the fast track, bro.
I mean, I didn't realize it then, but yes. I meet this man and now my life has completely changed. Like I'm, you know, I'm walking into rooms that, you know, Madonna is just casually there, and you know, what's the motto? The famous Naomi Campbell. She's just chilling. You know, Veronica Webb chilling. Spike Lee's just, you know, whatever there, just hanging out, and Fab Five Freddy and people like that. It's just regular. It's just super casual. And you know, like I got acclimated. I got accustomed to that. I got, you know, like, okay, like I'm part of this. Like I'm really here. And you know, Pee Wee Herman is literally right across, right. He's sitting right there, and we're about to have the conversation.
Right.
So that was really fun and really interesting.
Did you look at it as hip hop? That's my shit, because it was hip hop. But did you look at it as hip hop?
Hip hop is a common thread in all of it, right? Because you know, you got to understand the times. It's Public Enemy is popping. You know, Rakim, it's Kane. It's like all these things, these common threads that are just in the air and that are happening. And yes, to me, it was hip hop. To me, that was the common thread of everything.
Right. Tell me about losing Keith, because we know Keith passed away late '89.
He passed away in early 1990. So it's crazy because I met Keith quite late into his life. I was 17. It was May 22nd, 1988. I was a month and a half away from my 18th birthday. And this man just radically changes my life. He knows that he is sick. He tells me soon after, you know, we meet that he's sick, and he doesn't know, you know, what that means and how long he's going to live. And slowly but surely, he starts to get more focused about work and more focused about, I gotta do this, or I gotta paint. Like I want to paint on a blimp. Like I want to do that project, and I want to go to Paris, and I want to paint. You know, like there were certain boxes that he wanted to check, and he did. And for a lot of that, I was by his side. In 1989, he asked me if I wanted to be a part of his foundation. And this is something that I say a lot. At the time, I didn't know what a foundation was. I didn't know what a foundation did. What he explained was that it was a way for us, the people that he chose to run this foundation, it was a way for us to carry out his wishes when he couldn't, when he was no longer able to, when he was no longer here. And I'm like, yeah, of course I'll do that. So we lost him, and it was a absolute shock. Shock, even though you knew it was coming, you knew it was inevitable, but still the loss was a great loss. And if you could imagine a 19-year-old kid with the responsibility of, not the sole responsibility, but I definitely felt the weight of now having to help carry this man's legacy forward. Thankfully, we had other people that were a little older than me, that were closer to his age, that really helped in forming what the foundation would become. You know, Julia Gruen, God bless her soul, she is, you know, still with us after all these years. She really laid the groundwork for building the Keith Haring Foundation, and in a sense, I not only stand on Keith's shoulders, but I stand on hers as well, because she really helped to build it and passed me the baton and basically was like, okay, you know, you take it from here.
I want to, just one more question about Keith before we move
Yep.
further along in the timeline, because I think it's kind of obvious what it was you saw in him that kind of connected the two of you. But what do you think it was that he saw in you that connected the two of you? Because you met him later on in his life, but you became like one of his best friends.
I became one of his best friends. So it's interesting. The most obvious answer to that is that I was a prototypical Keith boy. I was the, you know, if there was a definition of the kind of guy that Keith liked or was attracted to, there'd be a picture of me right there. So I think that was what it was initially. And then, you know, when he understood that, you know, that wasn't going to go anywhere, we became just, I don't know, like inseparable because of the kinds of conversations we had, the things that I was curious about, the fact that, you know, I didn't go running, you know, when I was exposed to like his life, right? Like, you know, we grew up with, you know, all these dogmas and all these things that, you know, we hopefully have unlearned by now. But, you know, we grew up machismo, tough guy, you know, we're supposed to be anti-gay, you know, it's not, you know, that's not cool. And I didn't go running, you know. I stood and I wanted to understand. I wanted to embrace and I wanted to learn. And I think that's what he saw in me. Like he's like, oh, you know, this is not you, but you're still receptive and you still want to learn about all this stuff and you're curious about things. And so I think that's what it was for him. I think what he saw is my curiosity about everything. I think that's what it was.
That was your college education.
In a sense, yes.
Right,
in
right.
a sense, yes. Because, you know, kids like me generally, you know, don't go past Florida. They don't go past Puerto Rico in terms of being able to see the world, right? So I got to, you know, visit places like Paris, places like Antwerp, you know, Dusseldorf. Like these are like places that, you know, are like my grandmother could not even conceive. You know, like my grandmother. I am my grandmother's absolute wildest dream. You know, she's like this little tiny lady from Yabucoa, Puerto Rico, and you know what I became, she could not even fathom. So I was just super open to those experiences. The travel was unbelievable. I felt like I learned more from travel and seeing other walks of life, from the little East Harlem bubble that I was in, the American bubble, and then just being able to see the world through a different lens, through a world citizen lens, and he afforded me that.
So I met you maybe in 93 or 94, so you're like 23, 24 years old, and I could feel that in you when I met you, like this level of maturity, like this level of you saw things that I had never seen before. Like you had a dope leather couch, and like I would sit in your real talk. I would sit in your apartment and hear these very worldly conversations that you would have with people. And I'm 18, 19 years old, and I'm just like, this motherfucker's the man. Who is this guy, right? So I want to get into that framework. Like I want to get into the mixtapes, right? So I want to be very intentional about this timeline because it's very important and the stories are amazing. But Keith passes away early 90. You were working at Armani during that time?
I was working at Armani at that time.
Right.
Yes.
I remember you told me a story about Pat Riley.
So Pat Riley was one of my customers at Armani. Not only was Pat Riley my customer, but also Mo Cheeks when he was a Nick. I forget. There was one more Nick that was one of my customers, and Pat Riley was like a Armani guy. He was Armani down. Like he could get the suits free. Mr. Armani was giving them suits like free. He'd just come in, we get them tailored, and he'd walk out. Walk out the next week with like 10 or 12 suits.
Right.
At like 3,000 per. Cool guy, cool customer. Barely said a word. Like it was almost like he would float in and float out.
Right.
Super cool.
Now, how do you juxtapose this life downtown with the barrio, with Spanish Harlem? When did you move out of Wagner?
I moved out of Wagner when I was 14. Because I felt I needed a little more structure. So I moved with my dad when I was 14. I needed to move out of Wagner because I was loose, man. I was not that I was committing any crimes or anything like that, but I was just too exposed to a lot of danger. And I don't know what was telling me at 14 years old, this is probably not a good idea for you to be here. You probably need some more structure and more safety than what you have here at Mom's house. Right. So Pop took me in. He lived at 1199 on 110th Street.
110th and
110th between First and the FDR
Oh, so he was right there. Okay.
Yeah, not too far.
Right.
And I just had a little more structure there, and he was, he wasn't super strict, but it's just, I really had zero guidance.
Yo, I think it's dope how you listen to that inner voice. And you've already mentioned 2 examples of you listening to it and it paying dividends.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. It's like, it's like, I don't know if it's my, I don't take credit for it. You know what I mean? Like I'm a believer that, sometimes it's your ancestors that protect you. So in some way, I was being kind of guided into safety when I needed it. So
right. You leave Armani when?
I forget. I want to say 92 or 93, but I start making tapes in 91.
So you start making tapes. Let's talk about that. Now, G-Bo the Pro, DJ Ray Double R, that's iconic. But I want you to take me to the beginning of making tapes. Did you always make tapes with Ray? How did you know Ray?
So Ray was a little older than me, right? So we didn't really hang in the same friend group.
Right.
When you're young, a 4-year difference is very big.
It's everything. Right.
It's very big. So he had different friends. I was more friends with like Ted, his younger brother.
Who also was a Tech Knight, went to Tech.
Also went to Tech.
Right.
And one day, Ray needed a scratch. He wasn't the best at scratching. I think he got wind that I had like a studio in my apartment. So he comes and I performed the scratch for him, and it worked out. And then I show him this little thing that I did. I show him this little intro, this little mix that I did on this machine, my 4-track. So he's baffled because, mind you, he's already making tapes. He's been making tapes now for years, but he's doing it, I mean, he's doing it in a very difficult way. Back then, the obvious way to make a mixtape would be play one record, play another record. 2 turntables, a mixer, and that was your mixtape. Ray was overdubbing. So he would play a record, record it, rewind it, play that onto another tape deck, and he was
Yo.
doing crazy. Not only
That's
that,
crazy.
not only that, but he had a way where he would open up the tape deck. He would put like a bobby pin. He would find where
The point.
where to control how fast or slow, and control the speed of the tape deck in order. This dude was doing
That's crazy.
Einstein.
That's low key how I used to make tapes with, like, you would record a song that you heard on the
Right.
radio, press pause at the point,
Right.
and leave it
Pause
until the
tapes.
next pause tapes, right?
Right. So what
He's doing pause tapes damn near.
Yeah, but what Ray was doing was it was next level. It wasn't exactly. It was
Right.
pause tapes, but it involved more than one
Right.
tape deck going
Right.
at the same time, and
And
if
a
he
bobby
had
pin.
and a bobby pin,
Right.
and opening the tape deck up in order to access that thing.
Crazy.
And if he messed up at the 44th minute of a 45-minute tape, he was going back and he was going to do the whole thing over again. That's how insane he was.
Wow.
That's how crazy he was. But that work ethic, that, like I look back, I think about it now, man. Ray is really a genius, really ahead of his time. I give him a lot of credit for who Ted Smooth became, because he was Ted's mentor. He's the one that Ted learned from. That work ethic, all of that Ted is an absolute maniac.
Yeah, Ted is a
Shouts to Ted.
Yeah.
Ted is an absolute maniac when it comes to work. Nobody's gonna ever outwork Ted Smooth, period.
Yeah.
And he gets that from DJ Ray Double R, his brother.
Wow. So you had a new method, or not a new method, but you had a method that would make what he was doing efficient. Tell me about it.
Simplify. So, on a 4-track is really meant to make like demos.
Right.
So on a 4-track, you can record 4 tracks. You can record a drum on one track, bass line on another, let's say a piano on another, and then your voice on the 4th. So I was using it to put records on each track. So instead of having to rely only on 2 turntables, in a way, I was trying to mimic what Ray was doing by doing these crazy mixes, and when he saw that,
he was crazy.
Yo,
right. But that's the holy grail to him. He's like, oh,
he's
shit.
like, yo, I'm breaking my back doing it like this, but you have this, it's just like the light went on. So we took what I had, and that became the intro to number 9. And the reason it was started at number 9 is because Ray had already done 8 tapes before that. And they were mostly, I say mostly freestyle, house, but there was some reggae involved as well. And we just took it from there.
The first Double R mixtape I ever heard was number 12 with my brother Said the Dawn on it, Trinidadian.
Said the Dawn.
How did you connect with Said?
So the guy that introduced me to Said was Ted.
Right.
Ted. That was the friend group. It was Ted. It was Said. It was A. And I guess you were in that group.
No. I was younger than them.
You were younger
than
them. So it was them. It was those guys that were in the friend group. At the time, Ted was obviously, interested in being a DJ. Actually, me and Ted were together as a music group before me and Ray were. We used to call ourselves the Groove, right? So, Ted was the one that really brought A and Said
around.
So we record these demos. I forget how many songs we did. We did a whole bunch of songs, and at the time I'm shopping them. I shopped them to this woman, Sophia Chang, who was at Jive Records.
I know who that is. Yeah.
And she wrote me this little nice note like, yo, thanks but no thanks. But she listened to them. I think A had like a line. Survey says that the ladies were phoning, even if they were married in the heat of the moment. So, she really like dug the the Family Feud reference, the survey says.
Right.
But she was like, you know, no thanks.
Right.
So we shelved it, and that was that. You know, Ted started to do his own thing. You know, I wasn't really. We you know, me and Said, I think had moved down south at that point.
Right.
So me and A were involved and stuff like that. But I don't think A came till a little later.
Right.
So what happens? Me and Ray are making number 12.
Right.
And we run out of records. And we need something hot. You know, we don't have, you know, we have everything that's going to be on the tape, kind of, right? And we need like something to fill in a space. So I'm like, yo, you know what? How about this, Trinidadian? So Ray didn't like the beat at all. He was like, you know, he would be very dismissive and very blunt. So he's like, yeah, that shit is trash or whatever. But he really liked the vocal.
Right.
So what happens? We take that vocal, and we put it, you know, behind the Das Effects beat,
Effects, yeah.
and it goes. It goes. Now, mind you know, in hindsight, right, that was something that me and Ted had done together, and the thing that I did not do was I didn't ask Ted. I didn't say to Ted like, "Yo, can I use this for the tape?" I just went ahead and did it.
Right.
So in hindsight, that was not cool, and I think, you know, that caused some hard feelings between us.
Understandable.
But, you know, it went.
Right.
It went.
Now, for me, I'm a senior in high school. 12 comes out. Whoever the fuck is that sounds like Slick Rick.
Right.
And that's what everyone is saying.
Right.
Yo, did you hear Slick Rick's joint Trinidadian? It's not Slick Rick.
Right.
I didn't know at the time that it was said.
Right.
I knew Said in high school.
Right.
I didn't know that it was him until later down the line.
Right.
But the first time I ever heard of a double R, and we used to call him double R mixtape. We never said G-Bo the Pro and
Right.
DJ Ray. They were double R mixtape.
Right.
The first time I heard a double R mixtape was number 12, and it was Said's Trinidadian that really... How well did that sell? Talk to me about the economics of it. Like, did it rock? Like it felt like it rocked?
Oh my God.
It rocked.
It rocked. And the thing is, you know, like the way most people sold tapes at the time was they would give the stores a master, right? So they would make a copy of the tape, they would give it to the store, and basically say, you know,
Make as many copies.
Give me $250 and make as many copies as you want, and that's the end of that. The way we did it was we would make each copy.
Right.
And we would sell them each for $5, and the stores would sell them for $10. And we insisted that was the way. If they wanted to carry the tapes,
That's how they gotta carry.
that's how you got to carry. We don't sell the master.
Right. So was that revolutionary at the time?
It was revolutionary. It was, you know, it was unheard of.
Right.
Because it took more time. It took more work on our behalf.
But it also was much more economically beneficial.
It was, but you had to work harder for the money.
Yeah.
You had to work harder for it. And it didn't, you know, the other side of it is that, you know, the guys that were selling masters could do a run and go around town, sell their master, and get right back to work. We had to put out the tape and then make copies. So we had like 60 tape decks behind us.
Yeah, I remember.
So it, you know, people used to get upset because it took us a long time to put tapes out. We were more concerned about quality, not quantity. We cared about how the tape sounded, and again, this is mostly Double R because he's an absolute, and I say this in the most respectful, nicest way. He's an absolute maniac when it came to quality, and he just was the hardest worker that I've come across in my life, honestly.
So, I leave high school, I go to Morgan. I connect with Dre. Dre's a tech night. We at Morgan, we got an amazing crew. We doing everything we want to do out there. We rhyming, we fighting, whatever it is, it's going down. And A can rhyme. Like, he could really rhyme.
He could really rhyme.
Right? And so he lived my sophomore year, I moved into a place called Park Crescent. He lived on the first floor and I lived on the third floor. And I would come downstairs to the first floor and he would be writing and I started writing. And like, he would kick his shit, I would kick my shit. And he was like, yo, when you come home, you gotta come to Spanish Harlem. So I'm like, all right, whatever. January of '93, the first time I come to Spanish Harlem is when I meet you. Mm-hmm. And I come to your crib. I don't know if this was on 108 between 1st and 2nd. It was like in a school building, right? I come upstairs. You got the big G-Bo, Keith Haring shit.
Crazy, man.
And I had only known who Keith Haring was because of the Crack is Whack, because of the man, like the iconic dude. But I come into your house and you got like an 8-foot by 6-foot and the shit says G-Bo all over it. You got the tape decks, Adine tape decks.
Yes.
And we sit there and you're playing beats and A is rhyming and I'm like, I'm into something. This is
it was magic.
Yeah,
it was magic happening. I think, like I said, I think Ced was kind of, I want to say out of the picture. It's just because he was not.
He was away.
He was away, so
right.
He wasn't in the mix. And A is now being featured on our tapes.
Right.
And he's dropping like these freestyles that are just
ridiculous. Man behind the hands.
Just incredible.
Ridiculous. So
incredible.
That stretch from like 12 to like 21, you guys probably was top 3 mixtape DJs in the country. Didn't you guys win something?
We won for most creative mixtape at the first annual Justo Mixtape Awards.
Wow, Justo, rest in peace, Justo.
Rest in peace,
yeah, wow.
And what's interesting is that because the illegality of mixtapes, right? We were obviously invited to this mixtape awards thing, right? And I'm like, you bugging if you think I'm showing up to that. You think I'm gonna go there and get arrested? It reminded me of the movie. I forget what movie was it. Was it Serpico?
Right, where they invited everybody.
They invited to the Yankee tickets. Right, and
everybody gets. Wait, hold on. Let's talk about that because that's a part that I don't want to jump over. Right. This thing was illegal, right?
Correct. It's illegal because it's illegal, but it's also it's also being under the table. The labels want it to happen because it's promotion. Mm-hmm. They're starting to understand that we are not stealing from them, that we are helping to promote their records.
And absolutely.
Initially, they did not understand that concept.
Right.
But they started to learn that this was culture.
Right.
That this was
not
culture.
thievery.
This was culture.
This is a fair exchange.
This was a culture that was unfolding.
Right.
And yes, and that we should be compensated for putting these mixtapes together in the way that we were doing it. This was culture unfolding in the purest way. Like it was really organic and really pure. And they started to get that. They were nervous about it, but they were starting to get it. So in a sense, they let it happen until it got to be too much.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, for you, from a lifestyle standpoint, this really sustained you. I remember you had the little BMW, the convertible joint.
Right.
Right. You had an apartment. This was a good.
This was a nice little extra. A nice little extra thing to have. Like. We were super popular. We were like.
Right.
We were stars in the hood.
Right.
We were really, really recognized for what we were doing. And the other thing about it is that we were doing it in a way that nobody else was, right? We most of, what we used to call, you know, and we're all, you know, we're all cool now. Like people like Doo-Wop, that's like family now.
Yeah.
People like SNS, like I'm not close to S, but because we are of the same gen and we came up the same time, like there's affinity there, there's affection there.
Right.
Buck Wild, you know,
Right.
people like that. Like I hold them near and dear because we came up at the same time. But at the time, we were competitive. We were trying to knock them guys' heads off, right? But we weren't trying to do it the way they did it. We weren't trying to, like, to me, like, if you were talking on a tape and you were trying to be a personality and you were trying to, like, to me, that was like biting off a Kid Capri. I mean, to me, that was just like, you know, me and Ray, we used to call them Kid Capri Juniors. Like, you know, we kind of like used to like look at them as a little bit less than. And
Yeah,
you know,
guys never did that.
we didn't do that. We didn't do that.
Like, never. It used to be forcing you to talk
barely, yeah.
on the
we
tape.
barely,
Right.
we would barely do it. But you know, ultimately, in the long game, right? What these guys were doing, they were branding themselves, right? We didn't see it like that. We branded, you know, we wanted the music to speak for us. And what they were doing was actually really brilliant, is that, you know, it's not that they were copying Kid Capri, they were showcasing their own personality and what they brought to the table, and, you know, it just was different. And we just, you know, we weren't that, you know, we were not that. So we did it very differently, and I think that's kind of why we stood out the way we did.
Pops, Demo Tape, the Tommy Boy piece. You start moving into a different space out of just mixtapes and actually into the space, artist
into
space.
the record business.
Right, into the record business. Did that change the scope of the work from a DJ standpoint?
In a way, it kind of ruined it.
Yeah.
In a way, it kind of ruined it. Did that really well. And you know, subsequently, you know, A and I had like a falling out, and we're back to square one. Now we're still making tapes. We lose the Tommy Boy deal, and now we're back to making tapes. So how do we bounce back from that? Ray got this really brilliant idea, right? He said, instead of just selling G-Bo and Double R tapes, why don't we set up a company and we could just sell everybody's tapes? Not G-Bo and Double R selling everybody's tapes. It'll be this entity that we create. We called it New York City Tape Masters.
I remember that.
And New York City Tape Masters, we would send some random dude to go buy the master that had, you know, we were not involved face-wise.
Right.
And they would go buy the master, bring it back, we'd copy it, we put an ad in the Source magazine, we would ship to prisons and anybody who would, you know, like send us, it was like a whole mail order business. That turned into like its own monster. That turned into its own monster because now this is like, now instead of 40 to 50 tape decks, now we got like 120.
Right.
What year was that?
How you got that?
This is like 96, 7, 8.
But it's funny, in 90, so you're saying in 96, dudes were still selling masters of their mixtape.
Correct. So now, you know, now Clue is starting to come up. Now, you know, now it's like, now is, the climate is changing, right? So, you know, like, we're successful, right, and we're doing our thing, doing it the way we're doing it, and then all of a sudden, somebody moves the goalpost, right? So now it's not about how dope the blends are and how dope the mixes are and how dope whatever the quality is. It's about whether or not you have the new records. So that put us at a disadvantage. So now Clue is coming up and he's like
He's
absolutely killing it. And the entire mixtape game is like, yo, how is this guy getting these records? How is this possible? Like, how, you know, we thought we had access to pretty much everybody, and nah. and obviously the secret comes out later is that, you know, he's paying off some
Engineers,
intern,
right.
whatever, to
Right.
like be in the studio and to like take those things. And then he developed relationships where these guys want to do freestyles for him and all of that stuff. So in essence, that was kind of the beginning of the end for G-Bo and Double R. But at the same time, this Tape Master thing is still
moving.
I mean, it took on a life of its own. But you know, when that was happening, there was a big divide that was taking place between me and Double R. You know, before we were like the absolute, you know, closest of friends, and then the music business has a way of causing, you know,
Rifts.
fights and rifts. And maybe it's not just the music business, maybe it's just business, period, right? When you're in business with friends, and maybe somebody's not holding up their end, and maybe somebody's, you know, ambition, you know, my ambitions.
The other thing is growth. Though.
It's growth. And I'm looking at it like, yo, it's like producer or bust. And he's like, yo, cool, but we gotta pay these bills.
Right.
And we don't have no rappers. We don't have, you know, we don't have anybody that we're producing. So that kind of caused the divide between us.
Right.
And eventually, you know, it just collapsed. Years later, Ray and I reconciled, and he's a very, very dear friend. I could call him, and you know, we love each other now, but we had a tough time.
Right. Right. I always say, you know, boy bands never work out because men grow and develop in very divergent ways.
Right.
Right. And so it's very difficult to sustain something when you're in the process of growth and development. Like, it's easier when you're in your late 40s and early 50s
Right.
to separate business and personal, but in your 20s, you're kind of growing through the hustle.
Right, and you know, you're ambitious and
Right.
you have dreams.
And you're not where you're going to be.
Right, your dreams
Right.
are very possible.
Right.
You know, there are very few, you know, as you say, boy bands. You know, the one that I could think of that is probably the most successful is the Rolling Stones.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure they went through their wars.
Right. Right. You know, you're right. They're really the only band that
Right.
I know of that came up from their teens and still exists together.
Right.
So now we're in the late 90s, early 2000s. The game is fast. The game is much faster now. I talk about in each of these things, I had kind of like the conversation about between like 92 and like 97. Hip hop and the iterations of hip hop multiplied so quickly that by the time you get to 99, 2000, the game is totally different.
It's a very different game at that point. I felt like I was starting from zero. I want to say in 98, I got with my man Porter Rock.
Porter Rock, yeah, my man.
And Porter Rock was a force of nature. This dude, street dude from El Barrio, could rhyme. I mean, he was like to me, like a combination of like a DMX, Buster, like really just animated, had like an amazing voice and could rhyme.
Right.
And had like this crazy personality.
Right.
So we started working on stuff. We get a deal with Epic, Sony, and you know, things are starting to happen. We're in the Sony building. This is at the same time that Cameron is there, same time as Ghost. Ghost is working on Supreme Clientele, so we feel like this is gonna go, and it doesn't. We work on a bunch of songs. You know, they get some other producers involved. It just didn't work out the way that it you know, we had hoped.
Right.
And at that point, man, I was just done.
Right.
I was just absolutely done with the music business. I was disgusted. I was disappointed. You know, I felt like the business had always turned these really organic friendships into, you know, enemies almost, you know? So I walked away. I walked away from all of it. And I I put Jibo the Pro on the side, and I became a
Became
regular
Gilly.
guy. Became a regular guy, got a regular job, and just, I was done.
But it's funny that you say that, right? Because yes, okay, but you still had hip hop in you, right? And so what I wanna speak on. I want you to tell me about picking up Keith Haring again, right? Because at a point you pick up Keith back.
So years pass, many years pass, and the way that I say Keith has been a common thread throughout, right? Because I never stopped being involved with the foundation. I had always been a board member. I've been a
Right.
board member since 1989.
Right.
Been going to 4 meetings a year for 30 plus years.
Right.
But only as a board member. So recently, in the last maybe 3 years or so, the executive director of the foundation decides that she wants to take a sabbatical. They ask me to fill in for 6 months. And then at the end of that sabbatical, she's going to come back and resume the position, her duties, and we won't miss a beat. So that happens. She goes away 6 months. She comes back and decides that she's had a career. Like, that's it. Like, I'm done. And listen, credit to her. I mean, my God, what she built and what she was able to accomplish in all those years, I'm still in awe of. And Keith would be like extremely proud. But it was very sudden news for us to say, okay, I'm not coming back. So I continue on as the acting director, and the board decides that they're going to do a search, a national search for a director, and I decide to put my hat in the game.
Right.
I'm like, you know what? I want to be considered too.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I know you know me for 30 plus years,
Right.
but you're going to interview me like any other person,
Right.
like any other candidate. And I went for it, man. I went for it. I prepared. I studied. I had this. There's something that they call a presentation prompt, right? It's like when executives have to basically tell the board what their plans are, and
Right.
it's like
Their
it's a whole presentation.
Right.
Then, man, I bought this app. It's a teleprompter app, right? So I laid out my whole speech.
I need that.
I laid out my whole speech, right? It's on an iPad.
Yeah.
So the Zoom, mind you, it's happening through COVID and all this stuff.
Right.
So the Zoom is happening, most important Zoom of my life. I put the iPad in front of the screen, so I can't see their faces,
Right.
but the camera can see, they can see me.
Right.
And here I am, I'm like,
And the teleprompter's going.
the teleprompter is going with my voice. So I'm reading the material, and the everything is. I sounded like I don't know how I was floating through it. I floated through the presentation. I don't know how I thought I did really well, but that was like my little secret that I was not going to memorize, and I was not going to have little flashcards that I was going to refer to.
No, the teleprompter is what you need.
I'm
Yeah.
doing this Obama style.
Right.
So I went up there and I did that. And after, I don't know, it took a while for them to decide, but then they finally arrived at the decision that they wanted me to be the executive director and
That's
to
amazing.
carry it forward.
That's
So
amazing. And so what's your work like?
what's my what?
What's your work like? What is it? What do you like? What's your day to day? Do you go in the office? You got an office?
I do. I go into the
You
office.
take lunch? You got an assistant? Like, tell me what your work.
I don't have an assistant. So basically, I'm responsible for a lot of things, right? I'm responsible for, like the overall thing is to is to elevate the legacy of Keith Haring, right? And that involves a lot of things. It involves exhibitions at important museums throughout the world. It involves scholarship. You want people to study Keith Haring and learn about him and learn about various aspects of his life, about his activism, about his generosity, about his career, all these things that you want people to write about that. So publishing books along with those exhibitions. You know, and then there's also the other aspect that I'm very involved in is the licensing aspect, right? So the licensing involves us collaborating with brands, and we do things like this. We do things like the Coach sneakers and Adidas sneakers, and we work with a bunch of different brands to get Keith's imagery out into the world. And I think of that as a gateway into Keith Haring. Like, you may not know the story about this guy, but it's eye-catching enough that it might make you curious, like, yo, who did that? Or is there anything else about this guy that I should know about? Right. And it leads you to a really interesting, amazing story about this young man who in 31 years of life and really a 10-year career, rose to superstardom and really changed the art world.
Right, completely shifted.
Really shifted the art world and really became an important artist.
When I run the marathon, I run up First Avenue and I pass by that park you're talking about, 123rd, because right before you go to that bridge.
Yep. And
the one thing that's dope to me is that there's Keith Haring murals like along that area. Like you go in, like I don't know if it's like right under the FDR, but it's that wall, that crack is whack.
Yeah.
And any time that I see it, like MTA, so you guys have done licensing with MTA before, anytime I see Keith Haring, I think about you. Because you introduced me to Keith Haring. Right. You introduced me to that world.
Right.
And I always look at, the success of his work post-mortem, and I connect that to you. Even before you were executive director. Right. Now I understand that's your job now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, man, because that doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
It takes a lot of work and a lot of energy, when somebody is no longer here, to create excitement, to create, there are very few things that were as cool in the 80s that are still cool.
Right.
Maybe LL Cool J. Maybe, maybe. LL is dope.
Maybe.
But I'm just saying, like, there's very, very few things that have remained consistently cool like that, and Keith is one of them. He transcends time. So my job is to really elevate his legacy.
Right.
And I do that every chance that I get.
There's so much I could talk to you about. I wanted you to touch on your connection to Classic Material, which is an amazing institution. You got that hat is flavor.
Yeah, shout out to Carlos.
Yeah, got to get Carlos.
Shouts to Carlos, Classic Material. He is a dear friend. And he is about this life, man. He is about this classic material life. Like what he talks about in his clothing, like his clothing says something. It speaks to a certain generation. It speaks to a code that we had. It doesn't deviate from that. It makes me feel a certain way when I wear it. There's like a certain pride that I feel because he puts the work in, and I'm just super proud of Carlos. And super proud of his brand, man. He's just a stand-up dude.
This is what I want to leave on, though. And again, I could bring you back and we could talk about another hour and a half worth of stuff, man. Because I'm really you have been a beacon for me. Like I told you this when we was on the phone. Like you seem so much older, right? And I learned a lot by just sitting with you and listening to you. But then even taking that away, you know, being in my own spaces, I felt more confident in this culture of hip hop because of the time I spent with you. I actually became a leader in certain areas because of the time that I spent with you, right? But I think people need to hear your answer to this question. You have been a part of what legacy would call failures. Said the Dawn is one of the illest lyricists of all time. He never got a deal.
Right.
Dre, Agent 106, one of the illest of all time, did a freestyle with Red and Meth and burnt Red and Meth, right? In real time. I heard it, I listened to it last night.
I was there.
You know what I'm saying? Never got signed. Porter Rock, friends with Black Rob, part of Black Rob's crew.
Help write Whoa.
Help write Whoa. Enigmatic in his own right. Porter Rock was the man. I fuck with Porter Rock.
Porter was Porter.
Didn't succeed. What did you learn from those failures? Like, what is it about those failures that drove you into the space of peace and of success and of happiness that you're in now?
I think the mistake that we make is that we don't lean into failure. Like, I think failure is where the gold is. Mm-hmm. For example, we working out, right? We do 10 push-ups. Those 10 are easy. That 11th one is the hard one. That's where the gold is. And that's really where you make the progress. So I feel like when you lean into your failures, you can look back and say, okay, this is what I did wrong. This is what I could redo. This is what I shouldn't have done. This is what I won't do again. And you proceed. And I think people are afraid to fail. And I think failure is part of the process. You can't succeed without it. And listen, I continue to lean into failure. You know, I put out a song because I felt like I wanted to put out a song recently with Said. I'm like, yo, Said, we gonna put a joint out. You know, it was just more so like just to do it, just to get the ball rolling, just to get the juices flowing, just to, you know, like, not that we had any expectations of grandeur, right? But it's a step, and the next step will be better than that.
Yeah.
So
that's real talk, because what you got to understand, so from running, this is what I know from running. I know this to be true. You will not succeed at accomplishing your running goals if you don't accept the days that you have bad runs. And a bad run means you probably went out to do 6 miles and you can only do 4.
Right.
And you got to walk the rest of the way.
Right.
Or call an Uber, right? And now you're walking or you're in that Uber and you're like, well, shit, I didn't do what I wanted to do. But it's not about that particular day.
Right.
It's about the consistency over a period of time.
That's exactly it.
And what we get caught up in is that particular day.
Right.
Like, oh shit, I failed on this day.
Right.
But you got tomorrow, and you got the day after, and you got 100 days after.
But you've got also the 100 days before that you put in the work that got you to that point.
Right.
Where you could even have the audacity to think that you could do 6
that.
miles.
Right.
Right? That's audacity.
Right.
Right? It's like, and then, you know, sometimes you don't have it, man. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you don't have it. Not every record is a hit.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's about leaning into that failure. Failure is part of the process. It makes success that much sweeter. Yeah. And I'm all about that.
And for me, it's a thing, right? Because like I was in that camp, I was Renaissance, and you know, it was Said, it was A, then it was me, and you know, we failed at rap. And I put that in quotation marks. But like I told you on the phone, every aspect of hip-hop and every aspect of the skill set one needs to be in that space is what made me who I am at this moment. And so I don't really even see them as failures no more. It's just
Right.
part of the trajectory.
Correct.
You don't know. It goes back to what I'm saying. When you're 23, you don't know where you're going to end up.
Right.
You know where you are, but you don't know where you're going to end up. And
Right.
so those skills that you create, I was speaking to my nephew, he's 16 years old. I told him, listen, you need to have a skill set. What are you good at? Oh, I don't know what I'm good at. He starts hemming and hawing. I'm like, hold on, pause. When I was your age, I didn't know that the things I was good at were the things that I were good at. So it's not, you know, I'm not beating you up about it, but
Right.
what I'm saying is look at yourself
Right.
and figure out the things that you're good at, because the things that you're good at are the things that are going to be your arc in life.
Right.
And you've done that. You're a success. You're a successful man throughout the failures,
Yeah.
in spite of the failures.
In spite, because of them.
Because of the
Because of them.
because of the failures. You know, and I just, like I said, bro, we can go on forever. Kyle, what we looking like? Does anybody have any questions?
I mean, nobody had any questions. I mean, it's just been like, you know, love, heart, 100.
Dope.
Like, just, it's been a great discussion.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I
like,
love it.
it's so much, like we don't talk enough about the in-depth analysis of this thing. And one thing that I feel like you are good for in this forum is to kind of give a sense of the, you say Jibo and Gilbert are separated, but I don't think if it wasn't for Gilbert linking with Keith Haring, Jibo may not have had the audacity to do the things that he did.
Right. Right. Yeah, there was a certain thing that I needed to be exposed to in order to see, like, oh, this is possible.
Right.
Like, this is not only possible, but likely.
Right? It can happen.
Right, this can happen.
Yeah, and so I think that you're perfect for that analysis of how all of these things conspire for your greatest benefit. And I just, I got love for you, my man, but I really thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you, Marlon. I mean, listen, I am super proud of who you have become and the accomplishments that you know, the things you've accomplished. You're an author. When I see you speak in public, it is, I mean, super inspiring to see that guy up there with all that voice and all that confidence, speaking to his community, making a difference in his community, wanting to be the change. I mean, that is just super powerful, man. And, you know, from very humble beginnings, from like you said, from like,
Right.
you know, hip hop.
Right.
Hip hop led to that.
Right. That's fact.
Yes, yes. Said, absolutely dope interview. Salute my brothers. Love you both.
Said the dome.
Said.
Saucy, excellent interview. I've been listening intently the entire time.
Yeah, this guy's a
Great
wealth of information.
interview. Yes, it
Yeah,
really
this
has
is
been
one of
great
those
interview.
ones. Like, you can have interviews where it's like, okay, then I met Method Man, or then I was in the car with Jay-Z, right, and all these things. But then there's interviews where that really, really granularly give you, you know, the blueprint.
Yeah.
And kind of you've given us like this blueprint of how to exist in this space. Do the people that you work with at Keith Haring, do they understand how hip hop you are?
No. I don't think they know.
Right.
I don't think they understand like that part of my work. Which is good, which is like cool. It's like I like that it's different and separate, and it's my own thing. It's not something that I necessarily come to work with. It's something I obviously embody and am. But yeah, no, I don't think they know.
They don't know.
That's the beauty though of hip hop. You can move in so many different circles
Right.
but still embody it. Like it goes into every circle with you.
Right.
Yeah, I you know, it's interesting. Like my understanding of what we are, right? Like I feel like a lot of us think that we are our bodies, and we really are not, right? We are like, you know, we have bodies, we are souls. and that's just what I walk around with. Like hip hop to me is not something that I have to try to be. My expression of it is, you know, I don't look the part in a way, right? Like I don't feel like I look the part. My expression of hip hop is very different from what I think is the expected expression, and I'm super comfortable with that. I like that. You know, I come from a standpoint of, you know, being a Puerto Rican man. You know, Puerto Ricans and blacks created this music, and it's interesting that we are in Black History Month, because, you know, as I read and study about heroes, you know, I'm reminded about Arturo Alphonse Schomburg, who is the Puerto Rican man who is the father of Black history as we know it. Right? It you know, and when I say Black history, I say mostly American Black history. But it was because this guy that was a Puerto Rican, Afro-Puerto Rican, this teacher told him that people that look like you really didn't do anything in history. And he was like, what? He's like, nah. He goes and he collects all these like manuscripts and really starts collecting history, you know, Frederick Douglass's newspapers, and now this thing has amassed into like this, the Schomburg Center in Harlem, and he is, but all of that to say that we are one. You know, we are one people.
Facts. I felt that when Spanish Harlem became like a second home to me.
Yeah, man.
Juju and those cats,
Yes.
you, like, Spanish Harlem became a second home, and it was so much, I felt so much culture up there. El Caridad, the food spot
Right,
on
right.
116, like, there's this culture, there's this diasporic culture, like, you know, this African, this Afro-Latino, this Afro-Caribbean, this Afro-American, there's a thread of connection between it all.
There's a thread of connection, right? There is something that we all have in common. You know, there are some things that are part of Puerto Rican life that unfortunately Black Americans in this country were completely disconnected from, right? So they don't have the knowledge of the orishas and all of that the way we kept it in Puerto
Or the way
Rico.
other Afro-Caribbean nations have,
Correct.
right? Like Cuba, like Jamaica,
Correct,
like Haiti.
correct,
right.
correct. So, you know, all of that to say, man, that, you know, hip hop has reconnected us, that we are one people, and I embody this, and you know, it can't be taken away from me. It's who I am, and it's who I will be until I'm no longer here.
This was a great conversation. I want to show love to my brother G-Bro, the pro, Gilbert Vasquez. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Kai, you straight?
Yeah, I'm straight.
Yeah, I want you to come. I want you to come to
Wait,
the front.
not gonna lie, I never heard of Keith Haring before tonight. Now I'm about to dig in and research. That's
Awesome.
exactly what this is
I did my
all
job.
about.
Thank you.
Yes.
Facts. If we reach one,
Team
that's everything.
Pinkano, we are brothers. That's what the Bible says. Team Pinkano, yes.
Right. Okay.
Dope
Okay.
interview.
You want to come to the front of the camera so people can see you? 'Cause
No.
I always like I'm talking.
Let's just do the picture.
Okay, we'll just do the picture. Listen,
I don't look like
we're gonna
that.
take. Okay, we're gonna take next week off because you're gonna be with your loved one, with your sweetheart. You're gonna go out to dinner.
That's right.
You're gonna have candies and chocolates, and you're not gonna want to listen to us talk. So we're gonna reconvene here, February 21st at 7 p.m. You'll see the flyer. We got some amazing people coming up. And I really want to move this through the whole year. You know, Kaisha and I kind of, this is Kaisha's idea. This is not my idea. But, you know, one thing about Kai and I, you know, we always kind of manifest. We have a way of kind of talking vision into form and then manifesting that form. And so once she gave me this kind of idea, it was just about who can we get next for us to talk to. And we're going to keep going in that way until we can't go no more. or until the end of the year, whichever one comes first. So
Yes.
I appreciate you guys being a part of this. I appreciate you guys for following the site. You can follow Gbo at _Gil Vasquez.
Yep, or at Gbo the Pro. I have two IGs. So one is _Gil Vasquez, GILVAZQUEZ. The other one is at Gbo the Pro, GBOTHEPRO. You could also follow Keith Haring Foundation.
Facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll
Yep,
see
I got
you.
it pinned. I got it
We'll
pinned.
see you in 2 weeks, February
Yes.
21st. Much love.
Peace.
Peace, y'all. Thank you.
Peace.